our Ceramic and Crafts Focus Day for Intersect Chicago /SELFA. The fair will be live and open to the public through November 12th and will live on Artsy till December 5th. I'm Becca Hoffman, Managing Director of Intersect Art and Design. Today, I'm pleased to welcome our cultural partner, the Mint Museum, who is celebrating the 10th anniversary of Project 10-10-10 with 3 studio visits over the course of 2 days. Yesterday, the Mint Museum's Annie Carlano, Senior Curator of Craft, Design, and Fashion, spoke with Danny Lane and Tom Joyce. And now Annie will speak with Kate Malone. Kate will discuss the impact of the Mint Museum's commissions on her work, as well as current and future projects. It will be a great window into the difference a decade makes in an artist's career. Now I'll turn it over to Annie, and please enjoy the discussion and feel free to post any questions into the chat box. Also, don't forget to check out the fair live at intersectchicago.com. Thanks again.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the studio visit with Kate Malone. To introduce Kate, we're going to start with a video about her project 10-10-10 commission, Mr. and Mrs. Tutti Atomic. And when the video is over, we will virtually go to Kent in the south of England to say hello and visit with Kate Malone.
So, Mr. and Mrs. Tutti Frutti were made a few years ago now, and the two of them actually show a progression of making a core shape and adding elements. Mrs. Tutti Frutti was a big naked pot, and I covered her whole surface with a coat of solid pointed half egg shapes. And Mr. Tutti Frutti was a large pot, taller than Mrs. Tutti Frutti, and I made balls separately and then stuck them on selectively on the surface and to each other. So really it sort of shows the same thing slightly developed. And since then, as well as putting balls on pots, I've started to put cubes and geometric shapes onto pots. The balls of Mr. Tutti Frutti are about the effervescence of a character, the aura of a character, if you like, the life force of a person or a pot. And to then progress these added forms to squares and diamonds really has taken me into the essence of nature, which is in the geometry of magma crystals that grow under the ground, under the Earth's crust. And this molten, incredible lava, like liquid stone, throws out crystal shapes all of the time that grow in caverns and at the edge of this great bubbling mass. And I've become totally fascinated in the natural forms of crystals, which of course is geometry, which of course is also limited to nature. And so on my website you'll see this magma range, which looks radically different to everything that I've done before, in that it has straight edges and corners, which really for the last 30 years I've made great round, oozing, plump, fecund shapes. And so this is a real exciting time to start looking at the way the glazes behave on edges and corners. And it was a real surprise, actually, somebody's comment on the modernity of the atomic range, which is Mr. Tutti Frutti. He's from that range. And it was a progression and natural evolution of that. What I try to do as an artist is surprise myself. And although, as I said, the magma range seems very different, it actually, in essence, is similar to Mr. and Mrs. Tutti Frutti. So I suggest that the Mint commission a family of baby magmas to go with their husband and wife. That would be funny. Anyway, thank you. Bye-bye.
So thank you, Kate. That video was made in 2015. And so that was 5 years after the Mrs. and Mr. were created for Project 10-10-10 at the Mint. I would like to say that since this video talked a little bit about the impact of that commission on your work up to 2015, you might share with us how you feel today about that commission and how it influences what you're doing today. And before we get to your studio, and I know it's getting dark in Kent, but I do want to let everyone know it is also the first anniversary, or yesterday was, of Kate being awarded the MBE, an extremely high honor in the UK, by the Queen for all of her many contributions to the field of ceramic art, both as a maker and as a teacher, mentor, and ambassador to the world for clay. So now, Kate, hello, and let's see where you are.
Okay, Annie, hi. Now I'm trying to switch it round so that I can show everybody where I am. I'm just gonna, oh, here we are. Okay, so can you hear me? Thumbs up, Annie, you can hear me? Okay, so we're in Kent, and really in the last half hour that we've been chatting before the Zoom, it was light. And if it was light, you'd be able to see these 17th century thatched barns where I store all my molds, and I have my pug mill and a small kiln. But here are two rooms, which are the key to what I'm doing at the moment. And I have to say, if I swing round, that is where I live. And so I tend to work a 15 to 18 hour day. So my husband can see me when he goes to bed by looking across the courtyard into my studio. And here we are. So for 30 years, I had a very, very small studio, and people used to come to my London studio and say, "Where's your main studio?" And I'd say, "Well, this is it." But now at last, I've got room to swing my cat if I wanted to. This is my kiln, and you can see me now waving in the steel front door of my kiln. There's my kiln trolley, all the little props, and the kiln controller at the back. And here is this is a big kiln for English people. I don't know if it is so much for Americans, because you engineer so greatly and have much bigger studios than we're used to.
Your voice is a little muffled.
Okay, better?
Better, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is my kiln, and it's been built for me by a kiln builder who built me a same sized kiln 30 years ago in London, which I've left behind in London for a group of potters to use. And it's a biscuit firing. That's just, these are some little magma lidded pots, and there's a basket pot at the back. And all this is showing all my sort of magma and geometry things. But here we are, this is what I'm known for, really, are these natural forms. This is a wall pineapple with a little baby here made. I made these to raise money for an Indian charity during lockdown. And this is my glaze room. So all these buckets here are indicated what's inside the buckets. Here we have super white, and there's the glaze on the other side showing that. And I have shelves of honeys and greens and blues, and I mix, these are my raw materials. So there's flint and frit and things like that in these bins, and my weighing scales that are calibrated every month. There are my little calibration weights so that we're accurate with weighing out, because every single glaze has a recipe, and the recipe has to be mixed correctly and sieved, and then you get a bucket of glaze. And these are some pieces on my drying rack. This is the lid. Can you see there's figs and figs bursting open and acorns?
That's exquisite. It reminds me of a Dutch still life, Kate.
Thank you, Annie. There's the base, which is a basket base. So that's actually a lid. I won't pull it now because it's raw clay. And these are all pieces in half stages of being made. Here, these very little fine pieces. And really, I do make quite a mix of things. I mean, the root of it is all held together by the glazes, I suppose, because even if the pieces for 10-10-10 and the pieces here and the geometric pieces and the natural forms, they're all sort of held together by these crystalline glazes. And here in the making room is a pumpkin which I'm right in the middle of glazing. Here's
Mm.
the glaze, and this glaze will turn out to be honey with blue crystals. And I literally paint the glazes onto the surface of the pots. But in fact, this glaze is going to be this color here.
Mm.
You never know how many crystals you're going to get. So, and this is a lady who's looking for one. She's got lots of blue crystals, but you never know if you're going to get one or hundreds of them.
Mm.
And,
So, are these glazes your original recipes?
yes, they are. So if I go back to well, when I say that, I mean, potters are so kind with glaze recipes in England, very much so. And I met two characters who are both sadly passed away now, Emmanuel Cooper and Derek Clarkson, and they gave me their base recipes. So this recipe here, which is DCE, that's named after Derek Clarkson. And so I took his base recipe, which all of you can see here. It's free for everybody to see. And then I started adding variations to it. So this is a manual that I just have in the studio of all my recipes. So really this shows the extent. I probably spend about a sixth of my working time working on new recipes and working new colors. And that's very, very important because it's, you know, it's like the artist's palette really. All the raw materials are changing all the time. And so I might buy cobalt, which is blue, and then a year later buy a jar of it, it might be slightly different, but that's quite exciting. And here on the bench, this is my mad bench, all these boxes. I employ a team of assistants, and during lockdown, they've been making things and sending them to me, or I've been sending a courier to collect. So these boxes are full of blackberries and acorns made by a Hungarian assistant called Erika Albrecht. And there are cubes made by Enrique, who's Spanish, and here's a cube mold here. And these are experiments that I've been trying to work out some weaving on the lid of a bottle. And then these are just tests in the studio. And I'm making this basket here, which is inspired by this basket here. And more pieces that are just hot in a state. So these are soft. You can see the softness here. And then this is my lockdown tree. I'm rather excited about this mad, big, strange pot, which has got a hole in the top down into a vase.
That one is so fantastic, and I've enjoyed seeing it evolve via your Instagram accounts.
And these are daffodil, these are lidded pots. So when they're fired completely, this opens out. And these are based on daffodils made in the spring during lockdown. And these are seeds. And this is really about worshipping the fact that seeds and fruits, everyday fruits and vegetables and extraordinary ones, are so magical. Yeah, so I think I've shown you a good spectrum in the studio. There's just one more little thing to show, and this is my sort of inspiration shelf. So this is a Czechoslovakian glass bottle that was covered in telephone wire by miners. They were taken down into the mines. This is an Alsace, gone dark. This is an Alsace little tobacco pot. This is a very cheap little bird piece from eBay. These are 300-year-old icons from China. I won't say it. And this is a seed here, and a piece by Mojak, and a piece by Axel Salto, 1957. Wow. A very famous, who's a big inspiration. This is a whale's ear bone. This is a gurgot, a very, very ancient and rare fossil, and so on and so forth.
What about I don't see any of your Toby jugs.
No, the latest jugs, because so this area changes. So these are French turn of the century peasant jugs that we use, except for that one which I've made. But I'm hoping, because I've just moved into this lovely new historical house called Bolingbroke Farmhouse, I'm hoping to find local clay and make bollyware, which is functional, very different from the sort of elaborate pots that I've been making. And it's going to be about a place, for a place, and from a place, using local clay, and have maps of the area. It's a very interesting historical area that we've just moved into. There's chocolate that I have while I like. And here's a little jar that's finished with crystals inside. So that's a sort of little studio tour, Annie. I'm going to turn the camera around to face me so that we can have a conversation. Does that make sense? These are the tools.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I see you have mud tools from North Carolina, designed by
Yeah.
Carol.
Tools are absolutely the best. He's just, apart from being one of my most favorite makers in the world, I'd actually had all these old kidneys, and I was talking to somebody in England about trying to get some made. And then Michael came along. That was the ones that I used to use. And Michael came along with these fabulous tools that have transformed potters' lives, actually. Also, these blades are by him. And here's my tool trolley. You know, some of the tools have been made by friends and others are. So this is made from boxwood by a man in France. It cost 90 euros, about $100, this one particularly. And some of them are very common and cheap. So yeah, the tool trolleys, I love my tool trolley.
So I'm sorry, I can't resist. The poster, it's on the floor, it's on the ground of the sculpture in India. So
yes.
I would love for you to talk a little bit about the work you've been doing in India, because you are, as I said, besides an extraordinary artist, and I want to talk also about your work with architecture. But first, tell us about what you've been doing to teach and inspire makers in various places in India.
Well, I've been going to India with my husband for 30 years. We probably had about 25 trips there. And sometimes it's pure pleasure and we stumble across potteries. And other times I look for institutions where I can be. And obviously, if you want to visit somewhere, you don't want to feel like you're just visiting and taking. So I normally try and take things to a place. So I've been working with different organizations, and we could do an hour's talk on this, Annie. But mainly there's one fantastic educational establishment that I've made contact with, and we were going to try and organize something, but lockdown happened, so it's on hold. And they're called the Agastya Foundation. And then there's KVIC, which is the Khadi Village Industries Corporation, established by Gandhi, saying that crafts empower people. And their incentive is to empower the villagers with very basic craft. So it's really strange because I'm working with them, and I've been to the southern tip in Kanyakumari of India and talked to different tribal people who are the most basic potters. They make the most simple things for cooking or for holding water or holding plants. And I kind of make the fanciest pots around. And it's so strange that we have this discourse that I'm hoping to organize a big thing. I took my whole team out to India because I was always going and they never went. So I took them out. I sold a pot with my art dealer and we nominated the pot, paid for everybody to go out. And we went to the first ever Indian Triennale of ceramics. And really, India is on the verge, apart from this crisis at the moment, of a fantastic studio pottery revolution. And I've made friends with little clay station, this clay manufacturer and cooperative community teaching facility in Bangalore. And so it's just, I'm hoping to bring everybody together to a big happening in India with all the tribal makers. The KVIC gave out 8,000 potter's wheels last year and have built 35,000 kilns. They're trying to empower the village people. And so I'm trying to bring together Agastya education, with key artists in England, with KVIC, so and with the ceramic triennale, and everything's obviously upside down. But really, it's very selfish, you know. People say, "Oh, I'm so kind." You know, the best thing you can do when you go to a country is meet people who are passionate about the same things as you, isn't it? I mean, it's a gateway to really getting to know a place. So it's quite selfish of me, you know. And also, you know, we want to have fun and bring people together and stretch arms across the sea. And so, which is what you did when you reached out to me to do the piece for the Mint. I mean, it was just amazing. I know you lead the conversation anyway, Annie.
I know. Oh, we can go on for hours, but since we don't have visuals from the Triennale in India, I don't want to continue
You
talking.
can see it all. You can see it all on my Instagram. If you stream
Exactly.
back, there are films of us all there, photographs of us there, and lots of information. I use my Instagram and website not as a selling tool. Luckily, I have somebody who sells my work. So really, it's all about communication and sharing the field. It's not about selling. So I feel quite comfortable in saying, everybody look at the Instagram and look at all the links and all the things that I talk about.
Exactly. So you just talked about bringing your whole team to India.
Not all of them, quite, unfortunately. There are a few left behind.
Exactly. And you've also been a champion of a lot of the clay artists you've mentored and are responsible, to be honest, for their careers. And it's usually when I've been in your studio, except for the last time, it's full of people because you're making your own work, but your studio has always been, since Ball's Pond Studio in Hackney, a kind of community hub. And when I think about the work you've done, that's sort of the key word, community. And the community, it's students, it's artists, but talk a little bit about the work you've done with architects. I know you did a project for American Express, I think in Bristol, and then the Savile Row tiles, which are gorgeous. And I hope you do more of that kind of work. But
thank you. Yeah, well, just so to me, I make I work in 4 areas of art. In television, which I know the Great Pottery Throwdown is coming to America. I think that, it's all coming out. I'm no longer involved in it, but I started with the team who did that. But mainly
we have season 1 and 2.
Okay, so that's when I was judged with all my makeup on. Anyway, we won't talk about makeup. But basically, I work with glaze research. I work making my decorative art, which is here all behind me. That's my indulgence. And I work in public art, which isn't really about me. It's about community. Public art, for me, not for all artists who might want to just make a giant pumpkin and put it in a place, it's about the significance to place. And I believe so strongly we all have communities. We have our family, we have our friends, then we have our work, then we have our professional sort of academic community, and then various people that we meet. So it's everything to me. If your community isn't in a good and healthy place, it makes things much harder. So again, it's about, I do help my team and I encourage them, but at the same time I use them. They make things for me that have enabled me to make such a gamut of things. But the public art, potters used to serve a community by making teapots and cups, and many potters still do that, except mass production has taken over from the everyday. So my way of paying back to my communities and not just making my own indulgence of creativity is to serve and to make pieces for hospitals, parks, schools, libraries, and most recently for architects. And I suppose architecture is public art in that it's on the street, although the building that I worked on was in the most exclusive area of London, Savile Row. But essentially also, when you do public art, you're part of a greater community. Public art is 5% inspiration and 95% perspiration or communication or cooperation. And so, it's when I did Savile Row, we hung 1.5 tons, 11,000 tiles that took 4 years to make of crystalline tiles on a building mechanically hung in Savile Row. I always say it's my building, but of course it's not. I'm a part of the whole ladder of working. And so by having a studio team, the community is there, it's at home. I don't have to go out to meet it. They come in, or they were until lockdown. And to me, it's as important, if not more so, than the work itself. Obviously the work lives on and communities spread. So I'm and the Mint Museum was, the experience I had was such a great community. And with 10-10-10, you brought Danny and I, who are the English contingency of the project 10-10-10 together. I'd like to look at the 10 projects much more. But community to me is so important. It's weird in lockdown to be isolated.
but it's amazing what you're doing in lockdown. And I want to talk about clay community in general in the world, my experience, not as a maker, but as a curator, scholar, clay groupie. Clay community anywhere in the world I've been, they're very close knit and very not quite as altruistic and generous as you, but close knit. And this idea of paying it forward, giving back, is really important. And what's going on now in the UK that I'm not sure. Did you start the Fired Up campaign to build studios in underserved areas? I mean, it's something that I can imagine could happen in Charlotte, for example, or Chicago or Santa Fe.
Shall I explain the project?
Please, because I'm so inspired. I want one of those t-shirts.
Yeah, I've just had to send my own away to somebody. But no, so essentially, yes, I was asked, I learned pottery. I fell in love with pottery in a big, rough government comprehensive school on the outskirts of Bristol. That you know, and in those days, there was this amazing education policy where we did metalwork, woodwork, clay, sewing and cooking. It was part of the curriculum. It's getting squeezed out now. So many, you know, I could go, again, this would be a whole conversation, but essentially, I know it's so important for young people to get their hands on clay, not to make a future of potters, which would be fantastic, but the empowerment and the creativity that you feel and the witnessing of earth, air, fire and water, that you witness a change in materials, the physics of everything. Children are just so respond to it and they feel clever. You know, kids need to be, and the pleasure that you get when you have a piece of clay in your hands is better than anything. And so I was asked to be an ambassador for this great charity, which is privately funded. They have 14 centres in the UK, mostly in the north of England. 3 just opened around London, and they're built, they cost £8 million each. They're gorgeous centres where they have loads of sport facilities, loads and loads and loads of music facilities. They're into rapping and encouraging the children to be creative. But I was asked to come in and look at being their clay ambassador. So I want to build studios in every on-site centre, but of course our objective is a bit too big. So we've chosen 2 centres in Wigan and Chorley, and these are for kids after school clubs. I asked 32 of England's potters, some of the great ones and some who are lesser known, to all give a piece of work made out of 3 kilos of clay. And we're auctioning it. It's called firedup4.com with the number 4. And we're auctioning all those pieces. The hammer goes down on November the 19th, and we're getting all our celebrity friends to wear the t-shirt that Annie talks about. To sort of talk about.
Zandra Rhodes was
Zandra Rhodes, yes. I'm asking Britt Eklund today. I asked to do it. But essentially, we're trying to, and this is not just to equip 2 studios, it's to pay for teaching and training. It's because you can put a kiln in, but it can sit in the corner. And so we're trying to raise £100,000 for the first 2, and then we'll move forward. And I don't think it's going to end there. I think it's going to be a legacy that I leave. You know, it's going to go on and on. At the moment, we asked Edmund de Waal and all the great and good to raise money on a high value. I think next time we might ask potters to raise money in a different way. But, you know, like, I tend to disagree with you. I think potters communities are so generous and so sharing and so kind. And I've been encouraged. The only reason I give out my recipes when people ask is because somebody gave me theirs when I asked them. You know, so it's a chain, really. I'm not the starter of this. And I think the English pottery community, I don't know about the Americans, don't know that many, but the ones I've met, whenever you come together at these great potters fairs and potters forums and things, it's just wonderful. I mean, it's just the most, I'm in love with clay, as you can tell. I'm a bit embarrassed.
But let me be clear. No, I do. My whole point is clay communities everywhere are like one big family, and they have generous a capacity to give and to share. But I'm sorry, I will argue to the end that you go above and beyond. And
Well, pass it on, everybody. All the potters out there listening, please pass it on. Share all your information, because there are so many variables. It'll never be the same, and the field will move and expand. That's what we want, isn't it?
Well, and you know, in Charlotte and in North Carolina in general, we are known as the clay state. We have so many talented potters. So that looks like a
Pineapple.
it is a pineapple.
It's a symbol of hospitality and prosperity and friendship.
Yes, yes. But also the pineapple, the pumpkin, your work is very much for me an extension of who you are, and your love of nature, but not that you're very specific in your love of sort of the bounty of nature, right? Fruit, vegetables, nuts and berries. Okay, you did mention some daffodils, but that's not the core. And I've always, it's like just the bounty of the earth and the exuberance of the natural world comes through in your work. And I remember the first time I visited you, because at that time, it was a long time ago. We won't say how long ago, but you were living on the Balls Pond Road, and you hadn't moved to the studio behind yet. I don't know if you remember this. And on the table that you still have somewhere was this. It's a wooden pumpkin.
Yes.
From India.
It's in the house.
From India. It's in the house. Is it a tea caddy?
It was a spice box for spices.
Is it? And I wondered, when did you acquire that? And did that get you?
Yes, it did.
With the pumpkin?
That was key. You know, much like the Mr. and Mrs. Tutti were quite key in me recognizing things. But that wooden spice box was key. And also going to Mexico and seeing Diego Rivera's paintings of pumpkins. So it wasn't really the real pumpkin in as much. Obviously, they're all around us, pineapples and things, but it was the pumpkin seen by other artists. I mean, nothing is original, is it? We all sort of filch and move on. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was saying, I'm inspired by Diego Rivera. And my friend said, you just steal the ideas. You know, it's down to its course. It's just a continuum, isn't it? Right. It's a sharing and a rolling of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So what are you now? You just, I think the 2 shows in London closed last week, a couple of weeks ago, and I enjoyed the one where your work was seen in the context. So talking about, you know, influence of history on contemporary art, your work in the context of Scandinavian modern, I wouldn't have made that connection, but of course they really complemented each other.
Yeah.
With all due respect to all the other artists who were included in that exhibition, I thought your work in particular, there was an off-white grayish pot with the atomic balls.
Huh.
Magnum pieces.
On a table, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's standard. So Adrian Sassoon, who's my art dealer, he, during lockdown, had this fantastic, and his team had this idea of pairing up with the best dealers in Scandinavian mid-century furniture in the world, really. You know, those pieces were just, you know, out of this world. I can't believe that I actually have my work on those pieces. But it's funny that you should say it was a surprise. I've always loved Scandinavian pieces, and I showed you an Axel Salto piece before.
Yes, of course. And
I hadn't seen Axel Salto. I was well into my sort of development of natural forms when I saw an Axel Salto, and it hit me in the chest. He, to me, is like a man's response to nature. When you look at all of you who don't know Axel Salto, S-A-L-T-O, he just touched the beating heart of
of the green man of nature, if you like. And I think I'm more into Mother Nature, the female side of interpreting nature. But he is just the most stunning. And I think although Scandinavian furniture is restrained, it's so powerful, and its composition and balance and proportions are so amazing that I was thrilled to be part of that exhibition. Not many shows going on at the moment, though, are they? They've all been cancelled.
Or they're virtual, which is our new way of supporting artists and learning more. I mean, the fact that this morning we're in your studio. I'm sorry, it's afternoon, and it's
evening.
It's evening there. Well, it's tea time, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have my tea over there, but
so I want to talk to you about the 10-10-10 Mr. and Mrs. Annie, because it was a key thing.
Yes, and I want to say that Kate's approach, so Project 10-10-10, reminder for everyone, if you're just joining us.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. It's the 10th anniversary of Project 10-10-10, which is a series of commissions from makers all over the world, best, top of their game or emerging. I mean, we took big risks on 3 of them, but they delivered, and now they're quite established. But at any rate, we were celebrating the opening of Mint Uptown, and I'm looking at the clock, and we've got about just a few more minutes because Kate, we'll just talk for 2 minutes because we want to be sure to have time for questions from the audience. But Project 10-10-10, they were site-specific commissions, and this is the funniest story that I love telling. All the other artists were very specific. They walked around the building, they walked around the 2 buildings. The Mint Museum has 2 facilities, and they all chose their spots. And a wonderful Japanese artist actually made something ephemeral. But Kate said, my specific site is no site. You wanted the Mr. and the Mrs. to travel, to always be together when they needed to be in one of the buildings, Mint Uptown or Mint Randolph, but also to be apart, one at Mint Randolph, one Mint Uptown, maybe one of them resting in storage for a few years. And you said the rationale was like all happy couples. Sometimes you're together and sometimes you need to be apart. And that, to me, just also speaks of your incredible creativity. We haven't talked about your watercolors. Again, you've heard this a million times. I'd love to see you do a children's book with us. Maybe that's where the babies come in.
Well, actually, I remember, Annie, one of the main things I wanted them to reside in, even if they moved around, I think I suggested trolleys for them, is the family room. You have such a great educational policy, for families at the Mint. And to me, that's really why I made them, really, because it's about family. And when I came to visit you and when I go to museums anywhere, on a weekend especially, you see families experience culture together. And so I think I remember saying, anywhere you like, and not particular, move them around. But really the family room, I remember saying, the family room is where, it's very important.
Our Lewis Family Gallery. Yes, I'll pass that on. But of course, people, they'd be tempted to touch them in that context. But you're absolutely right. Families love them. But I will tell you very quickly, I know they're going to give me the, but I have to tell you this. I looked at Mr. and Mrs. 2 weeks ago with a leading New York art dealer of nothing contemporary, a leading collector of nothing contemporary, a scholar of mid-century modern. And they were blown away. They were just blown away by form, color, technique. And then it turned out they all had connections to you, which I'll follow up with a later moment, through people not you directly. But they do appeal to the scholar, to the maker,
Mm.
to the connoisseur of
Good.
any period.
And to children.
Oh, absolutely. And the
So
children
what
are
about these questions? Come on, we've got to, come on. Let's go into questions and answers because I want to meet the people out there if that's possible.
absolutely, but they haven't posted the questions yet.
Okay, so we can carry on.
See them. Okay, all right, all right. These are mostly people saying how wonderful you are. Hold on, that's not a question.
I mean, while you're pulling together the questions.
Comments. But so since these are comments, people are enjoying talking with you. Somebody just sent me a text saying, I have so many questions. And I just said, well, post.
Well, you know, while you're collating the questions, one of the things you said to me before we did this.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
So here's a question. I think somebody wants to come visit you soon. Do you take visitors to your studio? Obviously not in lockdown, but I don't know the
yes.
It's from a collector.
Oh, even better. That would be great. Could do with a sale.
No, I don't know that you. I don't know how you. Can anyone come to?
Yes, of course. And in London, I used to have it on Fridays because otherwise it was too much of an interruption. And we used to have a Thursday lunchtime for potters, and we'd have a forum. Everybody would bring some food and we'd talk about, people would have questions about projects and things. So that stopped, obviously. And now we've moved to Kent. It's a whole different community that I've joined, really. And so, yeah, well, definitely people can come to the studio. You know, I think, yeah, they can. You know, anything that I make over £300, my art dealer deals with, and you can see that on my website, but and other things. But I don't really, again, my objective, happily, I've made enough money to kind of keep everything going through the public art and through my art dealer. And so all visitors to the studio, there's no pressure at all. It's just lovely to come and, you know, you have to bring sweets though, or cake.
Okay, so we have quite a long question from a brilliant curator. So this is important. Among the different countries and parts of England where you have worked, does any of them stand out as a favorite or a place where you made an important breakthrough in your work? Brilliant question. And we didn't talk about Cotignac because Kate also lives in the part of Provence, part of the year, besides India.
So the question is favorite places. Well, I was brought up in Bristol and I have 2 public art pieces in Bristol.
But breakthrough, the place where you made a breakthrough in your work.
Yeah, breakthrough. Well, it's my studio, wherever that is, really. I mean, one could say I was fortunate. I lived for 7 years in the south of France where we brought up our daughter in a medieval village, and my work changed radically. I stopped making fancy sort of haute couture pots like your Mrs. Tutti Frutti, and I made big, simple sculptural walnuts, and I studied nature for the first time because I'm a city person on the whole. And so that was a huge breakthrough, living in Provence and, you know, making very fancy pots, and they seemed pointless to the people in the community in the village. They didn't get it. So I changed that. And then I lived for 2 years in Barcelona and I had a studio. I sort of became a student again. I rented a studio in somebody else's studio. I rented a space. And basically, Muntaner, Gaudi's teacher, was really a huge influence on my work. And I made all these kind of Gothic, kind of dark, not really Gaudi, but it's Muntaner before him that I studied. And so living in Provence and living in places really affected my work. I didn't know it at the time, but now I look back at those periods and the things that I made, it was, you know, it was so clear, and it wasn't at the time. Does that answer the question?
I think it answers it very well. And there's a also a comment about the massive body of work you produced in Barcelona that came to London for a great show, but I don't.
That was the Dover Street show, yes, in collaboration between Adrian Sassoon and Robilant de Voina. A beautiful room upstairs on Dover Street in great sort of Palladian house. And all the work was brought together for that, really.
Oh, I missed that. And so Gaudi's teacher, somebody wants to know.
Muntaner, Muntaner. He made this hospital. He made this hospital that my friend gave birth in. I mean, these little pavilions that are fantasies, absolute fantasies.
Well, the whole Modernism movement in Barcelona, I always thought was an influence on your work from that time, because it's not just Gaudi, and it's kind of ubiquitous, even in pharmacy architecture, interior and exterior. Now lots of questions. Comments are coming.
Well, actually, it's Muntaner, Muntaner. A genius, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, Muntaner. How will Brexit affect your living in France?
Well, that's a question that I try not to think about until it's all decided. Sadly, because of the lockdown, we normally go for every 2 months for a 10-day period, and I've got a studio there in a cave, in a real raw rock-hewn cave that stays cool in the summer and warmer in the winter. And how will it? I have no idea, and I'm not going to waste my time thinking about it until decisions are made. Lots of my friends panicked and, thought they might not be able to go. I think there are enough English in France for the French to still want to encourage everybody to go. My daughter grew up in school there. I just love, the people you connect with when your child goes through school. I was on the school council of this Provençal village. It was hysterical.
I know.
To talk about that. But yeah, you came, didn't you, Annie? It was so special. But essentially, I don't know, Brexit. I'm not going to say Brexit with an H because that would be rude. But
no. But we don't want to be rude. We want to end on a high note, Kate.
Let's not talk politics at the moment.
No, we must. Well, okay. I just want to say that this has been a pleasure. We need to wrap
too
up.
Short.
I know. That's been believe me, too short. And we haven't even touched on the future, some future projects that I know. I mean, we've talked about your community projects, but I want to thank you on behalf of the Mint Museum and Intersect Chicago for being with us today. Thank you for what you do, for your energy, your talent, fabulous jewelry, and fashion sensibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie, and hello to everybody. It's so strange that I'm talking to you all on a telephone in my studio, but it's the great thing of lockdown, and hopefully I'll meet some of you at some stage in the future.
Next year.
Yeah. So thank you, Annie and Kate. This was really wonderful. And for anybody who wants to revisit the conversation, it will be posted live on our site as of later on today, tomorrow. Thanks again. And thank you to the Mint for all of our collaboration. I look forward to working with you again. And Kate, it was a pleasure to take a trip to your studio.
Pleasure to meet you as well, Becca. Thank you. Thank you for having us.